In this video, we're going to compare the video capabilities of the Sony A7 versus the Lumix G7. Now, before I start this video, this is not a full frame versus micro four thirds battle or anything. I just wanted to compare the video capabilities of a budget full frame camera versus the all-time famous Lumix G7. So that's what this video is going to be about. Now, I've owned both of these cameras for several months now. And let me say this in the beginning of the video, don't get your hopes high for the Sony A7. I mean, it was never meant to be a video camera, it was targeted for full frame photography, and that it serves well. In fact, I did a whole separate video about the photography aspect of the A7, which you can check in the description down below. Alright, so now let's start by asking the question, can the A7 shoot 4K? And the answer is no. This thing shoots 1080p at 24 and 60 frames per second, and you can choose between the AVC HD or the MP4 formats. Compared to that, the Lumix G7 can do 1080 at 24, 30 or 60 frames per second in AVC HD, and also can do 30 or 60 frames per second in MP4. But on top of that, it can record 4K at 24 or 30 frames per second in MP4 format. Now I know all this information might be overwhelming. You might be asking, what does all of this jargon mean? Well, instead of me explaining, how about I show you guys the difference all these settings mean. Alright, so in this first clip, we have the Sony A7 at 28mm on the kit lens, recording at 1080 at 24 frames per second in AVC HD format. In the second clip, we have the Lumix G7 at 14mm, recording in 1080p at 24 frames per second in AVC HD mode. This third clip is G7 recording in 1080p at 30 frames per second in MP4 format. And this last clip is the G7 recording in 4K, shooting 24 frames per second in MP4 format. Alright, so here are all the shots, and you can see that there is a day and night difference between the leftmost and the rightmost image. Even when you compare the 1080 of the A7 with the 1080 of the G7 image is much sharper. And when you compare the 1080p of the A7 with the 4K of the Lumix G7, the results are just crazy. The G7 image looks far superior and has retained an incredible amount of detail. Even comparing the 1080 of the G7 with its 4K, the 4K footage has a lot more detail, and in my opinion, this difference is significant enough to record in 4K and maybe downscale it later according to the medium you're distributing your content on. Alright, so enough pixel peeping, let's take a look at overall image quality. Now, the problem with the 1080 on the A7 is that it looks very soft and almost feels like if the object is out of focus. Alright, so now we're going to see how both of these cameras perform to record normal talkhead videos, or if you want to shoot A-roll for YouTube videos. Alright, so here I am guys, right now we're filming on the Sony A7 with the 28 to 70mm kit lens, and we're at f3.5, ISO 500, we're shooting in 24 frames per second in AVC HD. So yeah, this is what the framing looks like. The picture profile is standard, I haven't made any changes to it. So you guys are gonna let me know if this is good enough after the YouTube compression, of course. So now we're going to move over to the Lumix G7. Alright, so now we're filming on the Lumix G7 and it's the same exact setup. I haven't changed anything. The lighting is the same. I've tried to match the composition. The lens I'm using is the 14 to 42 kit lens at 14mm. The f-stop is f3.5. The aperture is 1/50th of a second. ISO 800, standard picture profile with small alterations. The contrast is -2 and the sharpness is -2. I'm recording in 24 frames per second AVC HD, and this is what this looks like. Alright, so this is going to be the final test clip, and right now we're filming in 4K 24 frames per second in MP4 format, and we're recording on the G7, same exact settings, 14mm, f3.5, ISO 800. So yeah, let me know what this looks like. I personally believe that this would look a lot sharper. So now let's answer the big question. Should you buy the Sony A7 as a budget full frame video recording camera? And in my honest opinion, this is not the camera you should be looking at. I mean, this is a great stills camera and I absolutely love it for that, and that's pretty much the only reason why I bought it. But if you're into doing any kind of serious video work, I would suggest you guys to bump up your budget a little bit and go for the Sony A7 Mark III. But if full frame is not an issue, I would highly suggest the Lumix G7 as it provides an incredible value for your money, and even in 2018 the results it delivers are incredible. So that's it for this one, everyone. Let me know if you guys like this video. Hit like if you liked it, and subscribe for more videos like this. And thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.